here's another part of the city where we have the murals. The murals are a way of the community expressing their political beliefs. And again, this whole area, which is where 13 innocent people were murdered on the 30th of January 1972. You can see in the background, you see the Civil Rights Association. You can see the British Army stopping some of the injured from getting medical treatment. You can see the priest in the background, who then became the local bishop. And you can see the flag at the bottom, which represents the civil rights, being trampled on and being covered in blood. So originally the people on the march set out to demand equality and justice as living as Irish citizens within the British state. And the state response was to murder 13 innocent people unarmed in 1972. So we're just going to go around here now and see some of the other murals which are representative of the community and what happened on the day. So we'll just walk along here. This mural here in the background, you can see the young boy with the gas mask, because whenever the soldiers were firing tear gas at the people up what was called Rossville Flats, this boy was 13 or 14 whenever this is taken from an original photograph and is now up on the walls. They were fighting the police, which represents the British state, and this is an iconic symbol and reflection of young people in the north of Ireland fighting against the state, fighting against state repression and inequality. And just here we have, this is the famous Bernadette Devlin, now Bernadette Devlin McCalliskey. She was on the Civil Rights March on the day that people were murdered, and she became the youngest member of Parliament in the British Parliament, and she famously slapped Reginald Maudling. He was the Secretary of State, like the British consul in the north of Ireland, and she slapped him on the face in Parliament for his murder of the people in the civil rights. And you can see here the women with the bin lids. So whenever the British Army would come in to raid, the homes of the nationalist community, looking for arms, looking for wanted men, but also a form of harassment of the local community, people would come out, women would come out with the bin lids and rattle them on the ground, and this alerted the men to the fact that the British Army were in raiding in the Cregan and the Bogside, and people who were wanted by the military could then escape because they had been forewarned about what was happening. And this white edifice here is called Free Derry Corner, and you can see the Palestinian flag flying at the top, and this shows the solidarity between the Irish people who have lived under occupation for over 800 years with the people of Palestine, whose country was given away with the Balfour Declaration in 1917 and the creation of an apartheid Zionist rogue state in 1948, when the United Nations, under the control of Britain and America, gave 52% of Palestine to what was then 10 or 15% of the population who had moved in. So we're just going to go over to Free Derry Corner. This is the famous Free Derry Corner. From time to time the artists come along here and write messages underneath this iconic sign. This is where the march ends every January, and the people gather here to remember the people who were murdered. So you can see the Palestinian flag on the top, and then as we go through here, we'll be able to see a memorial to those who have died just further on up. So there are Republican commemoration gardens all over the city of Belfast, all over the city of Derry. We'll get them in Armagh and Crossmaglen and in other places. And here's something we've just walked past. This olive tree was planted on the 30th of March 2022 to commemorate Land Day in Palestine and the shared struggle between Ireland and Palestine. And there is the olive tree as a symbol of solidarity. This is a symbol of the Irish Revolution from 1916. This is a Gardens of Remembrance for all the Republicans who died here in the fight for national sovereignty and self-determination and freedom. Here are the names of the hunger strikers who have died over a century, starting with Thomas Ashe, who was the Lord Thomas Ashe, and then Terence McSweeney. He was the Lord Mayor of Cork. I think he was a Sinn Féin member, and he died on hunger strike in 1920. And then we come all the way through the 70s, and then up to Bobby Sands and the 10 men who died in 1981. This is the names, the Roll of Honour. This is Ogla Naharan, which means Soldiers of Ireland. Brigade Derry, which is the Derry Brigade of the IRA, Irish Republican Army. And these are the names. Oglach means volunteer. So volunteer Thomas McCool, volunteer Joseph Coyle, have all died in the fight for Irish sovereignty and an end to the British occupation of Ireland. And also here we have the names of the people who have died. These will be Republicans who, some of them died on active service as IRA members, and others are probably mostly civilians or ex-Republicans who are no longer with us. We're here on the famous Derry walls. Just looking over the car park in the distance, you can see one of the cathedrals for the city. Then these houses represent the Cregan, Shantallow and the Bogside. So we look further on down. This is the only intact walled city in Ireland. Hopefully you can see the old cannons in the background there. I assume they're replicas, just to show how the place would have looked then. So we're on top of Bishop's Gate. There are several entrances to the walled city itself. That tower was part of the original jail that was here, which was knocked down many years ago. So we'll just pan round and then we'll see down towards Bishop Street, and we also have the courthouse, if you can see the crown on the top of that building. And we have at the very bottom what's called the diamond area. So we're just going to walk along the walls and let you have a wee look at the city. The city's divided between the indigenous Irish nationalist population and the sons and daughters of the colonisers from the 17th century who arrived here in the 1600s. And that's part of the reason why there's been such division, such violence and such conflict over the years, because any colonial settler group will have its allegiance not to the country where they are now born, not to the people that are their neighbours, people who refuse to assimilate. That's what happens with colonisers. They come from England, they come from Scotland, they refuse to integrate into the new community, into the Irish nationalist community that lives on the whole island of Ireland. Ireland was partitioned in 1922 after we had a revolution or rebellion in 1916. That rebellion failed, but the people who died, they saw it as a blood sacrifice in order to encourage the rest of the nationalist Irish Republican people to rise up and demand their freedom from continued British military occupation and oppression. But because we had a settler colonial group in the northeast of Ireland, when Ireland was partitioned, the British demanded that the northeast of Ireland, 6 counties out of the 32 counties of Ireland, would remain British. So you can see the guns here. And what we're going to do is we're going to look over the wall and we're going to look down into the Fountain Estate. So on one side of the city you have the Catholic Irish indigenous population, and on the other side of the city, because of the separation and the sectarian nature of society, which has been encouraged and brought about by the British, we have 2 communities, both born and bred and grown up in the city. But while some want Irish reunification, others want to remain part of Britain because that's their colonial ancestry and past. So you can see the flags here in the distance. It's the British Union Jack and the flag of Northern Ireland, a state which I do not accept because I believe it is a bastardised state that was only brought into creation with a false unionist pro-British majority in the north of Ireland, which was actually a 20% minority in the whole of Ireland. So as we'll walk along the walls, we'll maybe talk a tiny wee bit about the history. But you can see the walls here in their entirety, all the way around. You can see the church in the background and the ramparts. And this is the Fountain Society. You can see like a house where an individual is flying the flag of Northern Ireland, where they're saying they're from Northern Ireland, which they see as a part of the United Kingdom and totally separate from their Irish Roman Catholic nationalist neighbours. So we'll just continue the wee walk here because it's a beautiful day and the sun's shining, and we'll get a better view as we wander around. So lots of tourists here. It's the summer. We'll have Americans and Spanish and Germans, and we'll also have people from Ireland who are curious and interested in their own history. But part of the history, especially of Derry, is that in 1690 the king, or 1689 say, the king in England, he died, and what happened was there was a power vacuum, because at that time you had the King of Scotland and then you had the King of England and Wales. So when the King of England died, it created this political vacuum as such, and that vacuum was then filled by, or fueled as well, by a war in Ireland, because the Scottish king, King James, wanted to become the first king, or maybe the 6th king, between Scotland and England, which had previously been under one monarchy. His daughter, Mary, Queen of Scots, I believe, she married Prince William of Orange, so he was like a Dutch prince. So the Dutch prince wanted to become the King of England, the Scottish king wanted to become the King of England, and for some unknown reason they decided to have that war here in Ireland. So Irish Catholics had been promised their freedom if they joined King James. He said, if you make me king, I will give Ireland her freedom. And the pro-British elements that were here in 1689 to 1690, they joined with William of Orange. It's an oversimplification, but you know, it's not far from the truth. The irony is that Prince William of Orange was actually, he was endorsed by the Pope. So a Protestant prince was endorsed by the Pope, while the Catholic King of Scotland didn't have the support of the papacy. And then they had some battles here in Ireland in and around 1690, and the first one of the battles was here in Derry, in the old walled city. So it used to be back then that in order to control a country, you only needed to control some of the major cities, and that's what happened. King James arrived with his army. He came here to Derry, and then what were called the apprentice boys of Derry slammed the gates shut and began a siege in 1690. The siege was broken whenever Prince William of Orange was able to sail some troops up the Foyle River, and they broke the siege, and this Irish stroke Scottish and possibly French army then left the battlefield as such, and we went on to have, I think it's 5 set battles. There was the Battle of the Boyne in 1690, there was a Battle of Aughrim, I think there was a Battle of Enniskillen. Eventually what happened was the King James was defeated on the battlefield. He fled to he fled to France, I believe. And what happened was he just came here, helped start a war to make himself the King of England and Wales, along as already being the King of Scotland. He took himself off to France, and then all the Irish who had risen up here to demand their freedom and sovereignty, and they were basically murdered, butchered and massacred. So we don't have anything to thank King James for, but the very historic city of Derry, they still celebrate each year. I think it's the Apprentice Boys March is on the anniversary of the date that they closed the gates. And the Orange Order, which is an anti-Catholic organisation. The Apprentice Boys, which is an anti-Catholic organisation. You can't join them if you're a Catholic. Indeed, it's nearly an all-male orientated organisation. If you marry a Catholic for love rather than for religious purposes, you're then kicked out of the Orange Order. So there are several gates here. This is the Ferry Quay Gate, and it shows you the crossing the Foyle. So Ferry Quay Gate was the entrance to the city used by travellers who had crossed the river by boat. Bridge Street beside the Foyleside Shopping Centre leads to the western end of the old ferry crossing. This later became the site of the first wooden bridge across the Foyle. When a new iron bridge was built in 1863, it was located upstream and Carlisle Road was created to give a lower incline to the Ferry Quay Gate from the river. One of the original 4 gateways, Ferry Quay Gate, led down to a ferry which used to cross the Foyle. The gateway was built in 1618, was battlemented with twin towers and a drawbridge. Ferry Gate once housed the city's jail. In prelude to the siege, there we are, 1688 to 1689. This was the gate that was shut in the face of the Earl of Antrim's Redshanks. Ferry Gate was remodelled in 1865. On the inside, the gateway is decorated with the sculpted head of the Reverend James Gordon, a Presbyterian leader during the Siege of Derry. On the outside is the sculpted head of Reverend George Walker, Bishop Designate of Derry and Joint Governor of the city during the siege. So while the loyalist, pro-British Unionist community here celebrate the Siege of Derry, the nationalist community just remembers a defeat. The hope for freedom in 1688 and 1689 and 1690 died on the battlefield with King James. And the reason why we then had 30 years of violence here is because after partition we had a one-party state where Catholic Irish nationalists were treated as second, third-class citizens. When they demanded equality, not freedom, not national sovereignty, and not national independence, just equality within the state, they were brutally attacked and beaten on the civil rights marches that then went on to lead to 30 years of violence. So we'll just go down the steps and we'll look over the city walls, and we can see down towards the Foyle River in the background. There's now a peace bridge that goes between the two parts of the city. So the Foyle divides the city, but it also divides the communities. And what we have now is the east on the west bank. Sounds familiar. And the people can walk across what's called the Peace Bridge in order to gain access to the city. So we're just going to take a final wee look at the guns which are on the walls here, and maybe someday you'll get a chance to come visit Derry and remember the story of what happened in this city. So we're now doing a wee video here. It's a representation again of Bloody Sunday. What we have here in the background is what the civil rights people wanted. Dogs not to be, anti-sick train. And the photograph is of the people who were on the march, which 13 people were killed. We're just going to go up now towards the memorial for the people who died here on the 30th of January 1972. In the background is Free Derry Corner, and this is where a lot of the people were actually shot in and around the streets here because the British Army run amok. People were unarmed, people ran for their lives, and they were answered being shot in the back in some cases by the British Army. So just here is the memorial to the people who died just here. You can see the Palestinian flag still flying above Free Derry Corner. And here is the information for tourists to be able to see what happened to the people who were murdered. Age 17, 17, 17, 31, 17, 17, 41, 22, 27, 17. You can see William Nash, Kate Nash's brother, was murdered here at the age of 19. Bloody Sunday, 30th of January 1972. This is the original. This is a contemporary photograph of the time of the people parading for civil rights, which was met by the attack by the British Armed Forces. And here is a memorial to the people who have died. So their epitaph is in the continuing struggle for democracy. This monument was unveiled by Mrs. B. Bond of Derry Civil Rights Association on the 26th of January 1974 in the memory of people who were murdered: Patrick J. Doherty, Gerald V. Donaghy, John F. Duddy, Hugh P. Gilmore, Michael G. Kelly, Michael N. McQuaid, Kevin G. McElhinney, Bernard McGuigan, James G. McKinney, William A. McKinney, William Nash, James J. Ray, John P. Young, and to John Johnson, who died later as a result of the injuries received that day. Padraig Pearse once said, "Ireland unfree will never be at peace. The bloody Sunday fight for justice will never end until the British soldiers, if they're still alive, are held accountable for their actions, along with the British government and the judges who covered up this crime." We're here really in the centre of Derry City. You'll see just behind me Guildhall. Very hard for me to see what's happening because of the sun directly in my eyes, but this is the municipal council for the city. And then directly behind me you can see part of the intact walls with the clock tower in the background. And there's a building just directly behind me. You see these three buildings, and the date on one of the buildings is 1539. So it shows you that for, I don't know, nearly 400 years, 500 years, how long the buildings have been standing. So there we go, just a quick view of the walls, clock tower in the background. Musa, my friend from Gaza, there he is, showing him around the city, which is why I'm doing this wee talk. And then that's the Guildhall. So we'll do another wee update later.